Hello and welcome to a very special episode of The Left Wing. We are coming to you pitchside from the Aviva Stadium ahead of this evening's Guinness PRO12 final between Munster and Scarlets. Unfortunately, yesterday's heatwave has been replaced by a deluge of biblical proportions, but we're here, we're enthusiastic, we're excited for a great game. Will Slattery with Luke Fitzgerald as always. Luke, it's funny, before the game you go through all the matchups, who might do what, where and how, and then something like a bit of rain can actually throw a real spanner in the works. As a back in particular, does that play in your mind when you're all day you're looking at torrential rain and knowing you're going to have to go out there and how greasy the ball might be?
It certainly does, you know, and I think with the quality of kickers on show today, as a back three guy, it's definitely going to be on their mind and they're going to want to be accurate there. You know, I think oftentimes when the conditions are this bad, having the ball isn't necessarily an advantage, and I think good kicking is kind of key off the back of that.
So Murray Blaindal, that should hopefully play into their hands.
Well, you'd like to think so, you know. I'm not so sure that's really Blaindal's strength of his game, you know. I think definitely with Murray, you know, his kicking is outstanding. You see that with Ireland all the time. You see how Joe Schmidt utilises it all the time. And it's a big part of Munster's game. They have guys who are good in the air. Excellent, you know, Simon Zebo, even Andrew Conway's not a big guy, but he competes really, really well in the air. I think that's going to be a key area of the game. I think in saying that, Scarlets have some good, you know, they have some good options there themselves. You know, I feel like Gareth Davies there, you know, Liam Williams is superb in the air as well. McNichols is good in the air. They have some threats there as well. So Munster, you know, they'll want to attack them there, but they'll have to defend there as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you're giving Scarlett some praise early on after, you know, tipping against them so flippantly before the game last week when they shocked Leinster.
Yeah, well, look, I don't think I was the only one who was shocked. I think the Leinster performance was uncharacteristic, to say the least. Although our record, the Leinster record in playoff, especially in the league, isn't necessarily that good, I don't think, when you look back at the stats. But I still think it was uncharacteristic. I think guys like Johnny Sexton had an off day, very unusual. Usually in the bigger games, I always feel like he gets stronger. You know, and I just thought even Easton and Asiwa looked a little bit off. They looked like they hadn't played much rugby to me, and I didn't think they reacted very well to some of the things that the Scarlets did really well.
Yeah, well, one thing in particular was the breakdown. James Davies, John Barkley, they pilfered so much ball, and Leinster seemed to be a bit late arriving to some of those rucks, and we were kind of talking about it a bit off air. Munster, conversely, against the Ospreys, were routinely committing 4 of their big men in the pack to blowing the Ospreys off the ball. They'll need to be just as eager for contact in the breakdown today to make sure Davies and Barkley don't make similar hay.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Will. I think that's going to be a key area. That battle of the back rows is very, very interesting, you know, and I think whoever gets the ascendancy there, you'd like to think that more often than not, that usually is the team that wins out, especially on a day like today. So that's going to be a key area, and I think we covered it last week in the show. Munster were excellent there. You know, I at the time thought, you know, especially, you know, we thought the conditions might be pretty decent for this one. I thought they might be overcommitting slightly, but I think the way they're doing it, the way they're retaining the ball over the last few weeks, though that extra number in there might not be such a bad thing on a day like today. If you can get nice long rucks, it can create little openings for you to get momentum in tight. It can create good opportunities for you to get penalties in that area. So that could be a thing that works to their advantage today.
Another way that Scarlets were so impressive last week was just the way they shredded Leinster out wide. And Munster should be even more worried because the same thing happened to Tone Park a couple of months back. As I called it my accumulator killer a few weeks ago. Why will it be different today? What will Munster have learned? How will they contain those dangerous outside backs? What would you do if you were defending today?
Well, look, I think line speed is going to be key, and especially in the tight. You know, you can't allow them to get momentum in there. If you get momentum in the tight here, that's when you might have opportunities to attack out wide. I do not think today, in saying that, is a day for the wide men, really. You just want to be safe. You know, you might get 1 or 2 opportunities maybe, and you want to be very clinical, but it's more about being accurate today. And I think the key thing for Munster in terms of stopping that Connelly attack is going to be that line speed. Don't, you know, deny the momentum. Make them kick in the air, defend well off the kicks in the air, and I think they'll go well today.
One thing that I've noticed when I've heard the Munster players speak this week is how many of them have never won a trophy with Munster, and how this is actually an even bigger day than it would be usually for another team in the final. Remember when you think back to your first trophy when you hadn't won anything, does it make you a bit more nervous than you might ordinarily be?
Well, I suppose you really want it, you know, and these guys, a lot of this team would have played against
Peter
Glasgow.
O'Mahony has never won it, for instance, which seems crazy to think about. Like,
I completely agree, you know. I actually wouldn't have even thought of him as that guy, you know. He's such a successful guy, obviously gone on a Lions tour. You know, he'll want this. They want it bad, you know. I think they have a real big tie to the jersey in Munster. It's one of the big strengths is that they really put 100% in. They, you know, they feel like they've got great support, and it's a real community thing down there. And I think they'll be hurting that they haven't won. You know, and like I said earlier on, a lot of this team would have played in that Glasgow match where they lost in the final, I think, up in Ravenhill a few years back, and I think they'll still feel like they'll still be hurting a bit from that, and they'll have watched Leinster, you know, be in finals here and there and have a you know, reasonable amount of success, and maybe not in recent times, but recently enough. And I think they're going to want it really bad. You just hope they don't want too bad today.
There's also the intangible factor of course, honouring Anthony Foley, you know, honouring his memory with a great win. You know, how will that play into the day? Will that be something, do you think they might mention in the pre-match build-up, or will they try to just be more kind of forensic, cold, clinical, and just go out there and just really try to focus on the rugby element?
I think a combination of both is always best in a final. You do want to be very clinical, you want to be calm, you want to deliver on the technical side of the game that you've prepared. You'll have a plan for how you know, what the Scarlets do well, how you nullify that, and what you do well, where you feel like you can have an advantage in the game. So you'll want to deliver on those things, and it's important to be calm and clinical in those parts of the game. But there are also parts in a final where, you know, you've got to dig deep. And I think that's where you want to tie in a little bit of, you know, what this year's been all about for them. And that's, I think, getting back on the top podium of European rugby. And I think, you know, they will tie into that. I'd be really, really surprised if they didn't mention Anthony today. He's been a big reason why they were able to kickstart things and get in gear this year.
Yeah, I have an interesting hypothetical I want to present with you. Obviously, you've played in a lot of finals. What happens at halftime now, say, if Munster are maybe 14-3 behind, a bit like Leinster were last week? What goes on in the dressing room? Because I know famously against Northampton, Leinster were able to turn that around. Leinster couldn't do it last Friday, so what will Munster need to be doing at halftime if things aren't going their way?
Well, I think it's really important to you know, just calm down. Make sure you deliver on the fundamentals of the game.
Which can also be the hardest thing to do sometimes, to calm down and take stock.
100% will. It's one of the hardest things. I always feel the best teams are calm in those moments, and they're able to, you know, refocus and make sure you start delivering on the fundamentals of the game. That's the key part. You know, retaining the ball, kicking well, competing well for those kicks, tackling well, being accurate in those areas. It's the basic things that win out in the final. You know, it's very, very rare in a big tight game like this when there's a lot of emotion involved. When both teams, you know, it's been a long season as well. Delivering on those key things, the basic things of the game, that's what's really important today. And I think that's what you need, you know, good teams, if they are behind at half-time, for example, that's what, you know, those guys will be talking about. Just
to turn it back on yourself for a second, this time last year you played your last professional game in a Pro12 final, 12 months on. How do you feel like you've made the transition? Has it been, you know, as easy as you hoped? Has it been tough being here today? What kind of emotions do you feel?
Well, it's a pretty wet one today, Will, so I'm happy I'm not in the back three for this one. And thanks for bringing up my last match, which I lost, rubbing it in. No, look, it was, to be honest, it's great to be back involved. I'm enjoying being, you know, supporting at the game and obviously working at the game.
Such great colleagues.
It's such great colleagues is right. You know, I'm part of a new team now, so look, it's very, very exciting. I'm enjoying I suppose, being involved in the occasion to some extent as well. It's nice to not be completely on the peripheries. But I'm enjoying, just as a rugby fan today, I'm really, and obviously as an Irishman as well, looking forward to hopefully seeing Munster get a result today. It'd be great to see them back at the top table.
Yeah, how do you see this game going?
I think Munster will do it. I think they looked really, really good in the pack last week. I think you'd like to think that they'll have a big support here in the Aviva today. I think it's 45,000 roughly or so that are coming to the game. And they'll be vociferous. They always are. So I expect them to tie into a bit of that with the emotion, and with their defence has been very strong all season. I think on a day like today, with the line speed that they got, and they have been getting all season, I expect them to put too much pressure on the Scarlets.
Scarlets 13-5 is pretty good value though, because they, you know, they beat Munster already at Thomond Park, as I said. They turned over Leinster, but the bookies still don't seem to be given a whole lot of respect. I
think it's probably to do with that home kind of side to things. Is that, you know, Munster will be viewed as the home team today, even though it's a home away from home, from I suppose. And I think that's probably why. I do think, you know, I would, I suppose, have a word of caution in that they have a huge amount of quality, especially in that back line. And that can be, on a day like today, you know, especially in the centres, you know, carrying ball, getting over the game, like they're big men. Defensively, you saw what they did to Leinster. You know, they were able to slip Gareth Davies into that attacking line, and they were using their wingers very, very high, which leaves opportunities for kicks. But if you don't kick well, and if you don't spot the opportunities, they have extra numbers and they can get off the line, and they're big men. They'll put pressure on them, they'll get momentum, and you know, they'll cause errors, and that could be something that could get them into the game. So with a word of caution, but I do feel like Munster have the slight edge today.
Well, hopefully so. We're going to be coming to you live, or sorry, not live, we're going to be going to you after the game from the press box, looking back on what was hopefully a good Munster win, their first bit of silverware since 2011. But thanks for watching our pre-match preview, so see you after the game.